Hi, student success. Welcome to week 2 of your summer semester already. Hopefully after the first week, you're feeling a little bit more comfortable kind of going through and navigating through the course. I know it might take another week or so before you feel super confident, but that's okay. So week 2 runs from June 14th through the 20th. And as a quick reminder, when you're into the class, here's the Start Here section. That welcome video is always there in case you need to review it, as well as the one from East Ark State, as well as your syllabus and other resources as needed. Eventually, when you get into the Lessons tab here, you'll see again your textbook access, the two lounges, the discussion forums like the Muddy Point and the Introduction Lounge that you are welcome to access and post in at any time of the semester. Week 1, by the time that you see this video, week 1 will be closed, so you won't be able to see anything that has to do with week 1. I do want to say though, toward the end of the semester, usually around week 6, I do reopen week 1, just in case anyone was a late registration person, or maybe you just weren't getting the hang of Blackboard and you missed some assignments in week 1. So I do allow that opportunity a few weeks in after more people are comfortable navigating the entire course. So keep that in mind and make sure you take advantage of that if you are one of those people. All right, so week 2, again, as I said, June 14th through the 20th, we're going to click in here. And this is going to be on chapter 4. So I actually think this is a little less intimidating than the first week because you only have 2 assignments. So this is chapter 4. You can see you have a discussion post. So you are responding in your original post by Wednesday for week 2 attendance. And then you're responding to 2 classmates by Sunday for the rest of your points for the forum. And then you have a chapter 4 assignment. So I'll go over that here in just a moment. So when I get into the materials folder, you can see that you have just a quick note on the materials. You have a link that will take you directly to chapter 4 textbook, and then there are some slides. So I'm going to go ahead and open up the slides right now to use as my basis for my lecture, and then just show you the chapter 4 link. So this opens up right in here. And you can see it's another like PDF type PowerPoint. So chapter 4 is all about listening, taking notes, and remembering. So here are like the big takeaways. College is different from high school. Well, hopefully you know that already, but this is, chapter 4 really kind of hones in on some of those differences. There's a lot of personal responsibility as a college student. Time management is an essential piece of success, and then the learning cycle in general. So here's what we're going to talk about for this. When you are in a college classroom, now this can apply to both online as we are here, or if you're sitting in a physical classroom, you have to prepare yourself mentally. What is the point? Like, you have a syllabus, you can tell like, okay, day 2, we're going over this chapter, week 2, we're going over this chapter. What do I want to get out of this class? What do I want to get out of this lecture? What's the main idea? How is this class going to help me overall big picture in the entire class? So those are some things you want to be thinking about whenever you start listening to a lecture, whether again, it's online or in class. Now, physically, this again applies no matter what, online or there in person. Make sure that you are well rested. And these are things you probably heard since you were a child, right? Eat a good meal, get a good sleep. All those can really play a big role in the learning process. Make sure you have everything you need for class. Again, whether it's online or at home, if you start a lecture at home and all of a sudden you realize, I need this and this, and you're constantly pausing or running to another room to get something, that just, disrupts the learning process as well. This one is obviously more about face-to-face, or if you're in a Web 4 class in which you actually do meet online, but at a certain time, be on time, give yourself plenty of time to get there, get your space ready to go. Make sure all the other distractions are put away. So that might mean your phone. Put your phone away. Maybe it means whatever else is distracting you. Maybe you need to sit somewhere in the classroom to make sure that you are not distracted by things around you. Also, when you're in a class listening to a lecture, or again, even playing a video, make sure that you're in the right headspace. So make sure that you are mentally ready to receive. And sometimes, you got things going on at home, going on at work, trying to kind of block that stuff out so that you are in the right space to take in new information. So physically in the classroom, if you can sit where you can make eye contact with the instructor, that can help with a lot of things. It helps let the instructor know that you care. It allows more engagement. It allows you to focus more and maybe less temptation to possibly fall asleep if that happens sometimes. So you want to focus on what's being said. Again, eliminate distractions, whatever that might be for you. For a lot of us, that does happen to be our phone, but whatever it might be, eliminate those distractions and look for signals, whether that's in the classroom or in a video. Is the instructor repeating something over and over? Are they lowering or raising their voices? Are they talking more quickly? Are they writing things on the board or pulling up other resources? Also, during a lecture, also listen for what's not being said. I will always tell my students that, like, okay, if you know chapter 4 is being covered on Thursday, well, sometime before Thursday, you should read chapter 4. That way you have some background knowledge, you establish some prior knowledge, and you can kind of take notes ahead of time. That way, if you have questions, you can bring them to class with you and you already know a little bit about that topic. You can also pick up on what the instructor doesn't cover, which can also let you know maybe what's not as important in that lecture, in that chapter. Sort the information. If you're one of those people that feel like you have to write everything down, you really want to look for the main points and look for what's important, what's not. So taking notes, whatever that might look like for you. Some people are not big note takers, and that's okay. Maybe you're more of an audio learner. You like to kind of listen and you just not jot down notes occasionally. Others really like to use Cornell notes or outlines or mental maps, something along those lines. So taking notes and really making sure the notes are working for you, and then ask questions. That's one of the most important things you can do. Asking questions about something you don't understand, to repeat information, to rephrase it in a different way. Just make sure you ask those questions, either in class, after class, email, whatever works best for your preferences. And then some people really do like to record the lectures so you can go back and listen to them later. And if that's the case, just ask. Most instructors don't have a problem with it, but there are some, they feel like it inhibits conversations. They may tell you no, so it's always best to ask first. Okay, so here are some like what to do if situations. What if your instructor speaks too fast? Like check in with other students, see if they caught something you didn't. Go to the instructor's office hours, ask them to slow down a little bit. There are some instances if your instructor has a heavy accent, if your instructor speaks softly or mumbles. So you might come across that in some certain situations. And so chapter 4 does go into more detail with that. Here's the section on note-taking. So again, I mentioned note-taking a couple of slides ago, but note-taking is effective, but it has to be effective for you. Again, I don't like to ever tell my students you have to take notes because frankly, some students don't learn that way and they're only taking the notes to appease me and they never look at them again. Well, that's a waste of your energy. If you are a auditory learner, for instance, you might only jot down a couple things here and there because your learning modality is through listening and then maybe repeating the information later. But for many other people, it is a visual and a read-write type learning style, so they have to have notes to refer back to. So note-taking is important for those people because it supports your listening. It allows you to kind of go back and test your understanding of the material, like how much did you understand? Do you need to fill in some gaps? It allows you to kind of repeat key ideas, and it can kind of help you kind of create a study guide based on what the instructor thought was important. And so in your text, you're going to see different types of note-taking, and I'll show you this in a larger version inside the actual text link here. And here are some other note-taking tips. Be prepared, which means, again, read the lecture material rather before class. That way you can already have notes started and you can just kind of fill in the gaps, or also be prepared with your materials. Something I learned early on that was it's a small detail, but it's helpful. Label, number, and date all your notes. Some of you might prefer like a note-taking app or typing your notes, so make sure you know what works best for you in that case. Don't write down every single word the instructor says. That's a losing battle right off the bat. So you want to really look for the key ideas, anything the instructor writes on the board or says with emphasis or more speed. Come up with your own system of abbreviations, leave some space. Review your notes after class as soon as possible, within 24 hours. Because the more you review, the more groundwork you are laying for maybe future assessments or papers, so you're not having to cram at the last minute. Also, if you miss class, some of these, again, might sound like common sense type things, but I think it's a good reminder. Check to see. I've had students do this in the past where I taught a Monday, Wednesday class, but I also teach the same class on Tuesday, Thursdays. Well, if a student missed their Monday class, they came on Tuesday because normally they were doing around the same thing. And that's what you always want to check with your instructor and see if that's a possibility. Look to see if there are any notes posted online. And the big thing here is like communicate. Just email and say, hey, I'm going to miss, or I missed because, so that they can stay in communication with you and you also show that you're dedicated and you care. Check the syllabus, check in with a classmate, all those things. And then finally, the last little bit of chapter 4 talks about your memory process. So what are some ways to take in information? As a college student, you're learning so much information on a daily basis in your classes. And so you want to be really deliberate with what you're trying to remember, make examples or connections to your everyday life so that they are more meaningful to you, connect it to what you already know maybe about the topic. Find a device that works, like a mnemonic device or pictures or chunks or something to try to really help yourself remember information. For me, for whatever reason, rhymes work really well. And so I often would put information into rhymes or little songs of some sort. Like, it might seem silly, but that works for me whenever I have to remember information. Testing is a really great way. So practice testing, whether that's flashcards, whether that's literally writing a practice test and filling it out and grading it. Sometimes that can really help pull the information out because honestly, we can remember information forever. Literally, it is in our brain forever. The problem is retrieving it, trying to get it out of our memory. So that all goes to how did we learn the information to begin with? If we stored it in a way that makes sense, it's easier for us to retrieve. And if we practice retrieving it, it makes it easier. So you want to kind of find the memory techniques that work best for you. Okay, so in the actual textbook, you can see, I'll pull down the contents here. This goes through all these different things that the slideshow just went up for. Actually, let me go back. At the very beginning, it gives you, again, that like self-assessment. So these are always kind of helpful just to kind of check in with yourself. Where are you in these self-assessments? And then where do you want to go? What are some of your goals? What are your strengths? What are your struggles? And then here are some things you're going to work on to get there. So this goes over that difference between high school and college that I mentioned in the first couple of slides. Here's what is in high school. Here's what's in college. And so some of this is, again, depending on where you are in your life, really obvious. Others of you may literally have just graduated again just a couple weeks ago, and so you're learning what the differences really are between high school and college. So this section goes over, being successful, so it talks about the listening process and how you can improve upon that. Here is, are you ready for class? This is what the slides talked about, preparing physically, mentally, how do you get the most out of that? This is a section on listening. So again, this is what I already just talked about in the slides. This just goes into more detail. This talks about active listening. I like to think that most people are good listeners, but I know in some cases I am guilty of listening, but I'm not actively listening, meaning sometimes I'm having a conversation with someone and I'm listening, but I'm really just waiting my turn to speak. I'm not active listening. And so being an active listener is a really important part of the communication process. So this goes over how to become more of an active listener, how you can listen with your whole body. And again, this is the listening inside the classroom. How can you really be an active listener during a lecture setting? And here are all those like what if situations, the too fast, the accent, how do you make sure that you are asking questions, even if you're shy. Again, I have students sometimes that they're just not comfortable asking questions in class. So they wait after class or they email, and that's okay. But this goes over, here's what you need to do regardless, asking questions. Here's all the ways that you can make sure that you're asking the right questions when you should. And then this next section starts talking about note taking, where I said you'll get a little bit larger. So, a couple slides in, they had this really teeny tiny table. It's larger here. So this is all the different kinds of note-taking, and maybe you've never been a heavy note-taker, but you feel like you should now that you're taking different classes. And so this goes over kind of some methods of note-taking. If you're a visual learner, you're going to want to really look at these concept maps. If you struggle with organization, Cornell method is really helpful. If you are one who like to see structure, outlines. And so this is a real quick snapshot, and then it goes into depth with each of these as you scroll down. So I do encourage you to take a look at this section if you feel like you struggle with note-taking, or you are trying to maybe try a different note-taking method to see what is going to be helpful to you. And then these are those general tips on note-taking that I just talked about. But please, again, anytime I lecture, I always encourage you to go back into the actual text and pick up on the sections, particularly that you feel you need a little bit more time on. All right, and then the very last section is talking about that memory process. So how we do need to, sometimes we do need to memorize information, and how we get information from our working short-term to long-term memory. And so this is going to go through, again, some of these things from the slideshow, but, chunk things together, use images, break down things in more manageable chunks, eliminate distractions, test yourself. And so there's a real quick memory exercise right there. You can kind of test yourself there. It's kind of fun. Just be honest with yourself. It'll say, memorize that list for 20 seconds and then try to do it again. This is going to go through some of those, again, techniques to help you study information to get it into your long-term memory. So the more organized you file what you learn, the more easy it will be for you to pull it out. And one of those strategies is using mnemonic devices. And they have the example there of Holmes. The Roy G. Biv is another one for the rainbow. So this goes through some different memory. There's the rhymes I talked about. I use rhymes and jingles. So this will talk to you about those. All right. So that is your material for this week, chapter 4. There. So chapter 4, I encourage you again to spend some time on whatever sections you need to look at a little bit more. And you have 2 assignments for this week. So I'm going to click into the assignment folder, and you're going to see, though, you have 3 things in here. Well, that's because these 2 go together. So you have to look at these 2 as one assignment. So this says, use the results of this survey to answer the questions in the discussion forum. So you're going to click on this. It's how well do you listen, because part of this was about active listening. You're going to click on this. It's going to open up into one of those little windows. And it's going to,
now that you've read about focused listening,
it's going to walk you through this, and you're going to go through. At the very end, you're going to get some results, okay? I'm not going to see those results. You're going to use those results for your discussion forum. So after you get your results, you're going to answer these 3 questions. How did you do on this survey up here? Did the results surprise you? And what's your plan for improvement? Okay, so you're going to answer those 3 questions based on how well you did up here. And how you do a discussion forum is you simply click into it, you hit create thread, and then the prompt will pop up here again. For week 2 attendance, you need to respond your original response by Wednesday at 11:59, and then you need to respond to 2 classmates. Again, a good response is, a question, a couple sentences, not just yes, no, I agree, I disagree. Really make sure it's a meaningful response. So that is due Wednesday for your week 2 attendance, and then make sure you respond to 2 classmates by Sunday. Those 2 go together. Your second assignment is your chapter 4 assignment. This is due Sunday. So this right here is due Sunday. Here's the actual assignment. It's going to open up to a Word document. So you click on that. It's going to open up. And here's your table. This has kind of the 3 big concepts from this chapter: listening, note-taking, and memory. And as needed, you can go back into your chapter 4 links and kind of pay attention to, where do I need to go? Note-taking, listening, memory. So it's up to you if you need to go back and revisit. So you need to think of 2 things to improve in each of these categories. That's what the action is. You need to improve 2 things in listening. What are they? What 2 things or ways do you need to improve in your note-taking? What 2 things do you need to improve in your memory? Okay, so 2 things you need to do or need to improve on in each of these categories. When do you expect to take that action? So it could be as simple as, well, the next time I listen to a lecture, or the next time I read a chapter and have to take notes, or maybe a fall semester. So when do you expect to take that action? And how do you know that you've accomplished that action? How do you know your listening has improved? How will you know that your note-taking has improved? How will you know your memory is improved? That's what you'll fill out there. Okay, so 2 ways to improve, or 2 things to improve upon in each of these categories. When you're going to do that action, when are you going to make those improvements? And how will you know you've actually improved? So make sure you save that somewhere on your device. Click into the actual assignment, and you'll find it. Just check it wherever it is, hit open, and then hit submit. All right, that is week 2. So hopefully that is not too bad. Again, like I did in week 1, even though week 2 has less assignments, I will reach out to you via course messages and say, hey, you're all finished, so that you know you're on the right track. If you need anything in the meantime, feel free to reach out and let me know. Have a great week 2.